Hi, Flosstube. It's Arlene here. It is Friday, December 23rd, 2022. Almost finished with the year. It's been a while since I've come here to chat with you all, but I'm glad to be here today. It is this rainy, yucky day. As I'm filming this on this Friday, there's this huge storm coming across the US. Where I am here in New Jersey, it's still like in the 40s, so today it is. At this moment it is. So it's coming down as rain right now. It doesn't seem to be turning to snow in my area, but I know in other areas it is. So it's very dark in here. So I've got all the lights I can. And I hope we're okay with that. So I know it's a busy time of year. Happy Hanukkah for those who celebrate. Merry Christmas for those who are coming up with a celebration. In general, whatever you might celebrate, I hope it is a good time of year. I know that the theme of light comes up in many holidays. And as we have just passed winter solstice, we can ever so slightly start to think that it's getting a little bit lighter, although it'll take another few weeks till it actually feels that way. I just kind of hold on to those kind of thoughts because the early morning dark and the late afternoon dark, like many people out there, I find challenging. So let me jump into some things here. As is often the case with a lot of my videos in the last whatever number of years, so much of my current stitching is on models, and now it's very much on models preparing for Nashville, which is coming up in like 3 months. But I do have some other things to share with you stitching wise, and we're going to go from there. The first thing to share is the very, very recent Just Cross Stitch magazine. So this is February 2023. So I think it's just recently, last week or so-ish, out. There is a Works by ABC design in here. And, you know, I very rarely, if ever, have stitched anything from Just Cross Stitch, but this is the back page, they kind of show all the projects in one place. And like, you know what? There really are some nice things in here. I don't know if I'd say that about every issue, but anyway, and of course I meant to mark this off. On page 44, you will see Love, Hugs, and Kisses. It is a set of 3 Biscornus. And I had this like, how am I going to show it so they can really see it? So I put, what if I do this? Aha. So the bottom one, which still has the JC Just Cross Stitch tag on it, has Kisses. Middle one has Hugs. Top one says Love. There are a number, but not all, of the patterns in this issue are like Valentine's related. And that's where, of course, my inspiration came from, was doing something like that. I don't know what it was that got me thinking about Biscornus stacking up like this, and why 3 was a good number and not 5 or something else. It just is what happened. And when I submitted this as whatever they call it, and then it was accepted, and I started stitching it, I was like, you know, I really like this idea, and I want to play more with it. And that's why, if you saw my last video, this couple months ago, in the time of winter time, I put out a winter Biscornu set. And so the top one says winter, the middle one says snowmen and snowflakes, and the bottom one says sweater, scarf, and mittens. And this is a winter set because there's more coming. I've just recently finished the stitching on the spring one, and I'm not going to show now. It'll be part of my whole Nashville reveal, but I'll give you a little preview in that I use this lavender, which is not showing up very lavender, but it is a pretty lavender Zweigart fabric with like a spring green thread. So very much has the look, in my mind, to spring. The ones in Just Cross Stitch were stitched using Etoile. If you can see, you can get a little bit of shininess there to it. And it's not on, I'm pretty sure this is like on, I think it's called Smoky White. the white that is like vintage country mocha, smoky white. The white that's like the equivalent of a vintage country mocha in that it's printed on one side and it's got a little bit of variegation to it. Again, I liked the idea and I'm rolling with it. So the spring one will come out in March. There will be a summer one that'll probably be out in May. And then a fall one will probably come out at the end of August. So I'll have the 4 seasons. Now, I also have this little list of other holidays besides Valentine's Day. I mean, this one you can only get through Just Cross Stitch. It was given as a design Just Cross Stitch has it as a design. But I don't know, I was thinking of a Halloween one or a patriotic one. We'll see. Right now, my goal is the seasons as we go through this year. If you are someone who has never made a Biscornu before, I encourage you to give it a try. And the easiest way to give it a try without feeling like you're wasting too much time is take some fabric, stitch out a square of backstitch, make it a decent size, because if you start with one this small, you might get frustrated. I don't know. But, don't worry about actually stitching any cross stitch on it. Just what you need is like a line of backstitch. Take a second square, same size line of backstitch. Then there are lots of videos online, YouTube is our friend, on how to assemble it. I remember very clearly the first time I ever saw one of these and saying to the person, "Oh my God, that looks so complicated." And her saying to me, "Actually, it isn't." And I didn't believe her. But the idea of having 2 squares and you're attaching them using the back stitch, and you start one at the corner of the square and you attach it to the exact middle of the other square. And as you go around, you get this like off-center pillow. And then when you pull, threads in the center, you pull, do some thread in the center, you get a really neat shape to it. So again, videos will explain that much better than I just did, but I encourage you to give it a try. A lot of times Biscornus have like on the bottom a bit of a design without necessarily the whole time. But I know I had a Biscornu in Just Cross Stitch a few years ago, and I know it was fairly full on both sides so that you literally could hold it either way. I also used a bead in the center. This was just a nice red whatever bead that I found. You don't have to use a bead in the center, but like for the winter ones, I just had a seed bead. I think I had some other blue ones. I didn't like anything. And I'm like, you know what? Silver seed bead works fine. And these were done on the sparkly fabric, which if you go back to my last video in November, pretty sure my last video when I was sharing this and a Hanukkah design that I put out at the same time, I know I have the details there. Just an interesting thing if you have never had the opportunity to kind of compare sizes. So the Valentine's ones were stitched on a 32 count fabric. And the winter ones, I thought, all right, I'm going to do them all the same size. And then when I saw this fabric, that has the sparkle in it, at least where I was at that moment, the only kind I could get was either an Ada, which I didn't want to use, or a 25 count Lugana. Lugana, yeah. And I said, well, I think fabric is taking precedence in my mind over size, because when I go to like take pictures of this and put it on the cover of a pattern and everything, no one's going to know relative sizes unless they stitch them in the exact same counts that I did. So just to show you the difference. So these are approximately the same stitch count. Maybe 1 or 2 stitches off, but basically the same stitch count for each of the 3 Biscornus. So these were all stitched on 25 count over 2, so it's like a 12.5 count. These were stitched on 32 count, which is like 16. And so you can visually see the difference. Now, little preview. Again, when I was thinking about the seasons, and I was well on my way with the winter one, and I started to look ahead, fabric color was taking precedence in my mind over size. If I could have had them all, like the perfect colors in my mind, all the same size fabric? Absolutely. But I found this lavender, which is not showing up very lavender, just said spring to me. And there is a particularly the fabric I picked out for summer definitely said summer to me. So that lavender is a 36 count, and the blue one for the summer is a 40 count. And so I have a few options for the fall, which is probably going to be a green fabric. And I think what I have are 32 counts for that. So the 4 seasons would be in a 25, a 36, a 40, and a 32. And anyone who get a chance to see them in person will see the differences. I'll probably make some posts on Instagram about it. But if you're just looking at pictures like in my Etsy store or on a pattern, you wouldn't necessarily see the difference. But it's a fun experiment if you've never had the opportunity to really compare something that is basically the same stitch count, but on different size fabric. So just cross stitch, current stitching there. The week or two ago, maybe a week, whatever, I'd finished stitching, or mostly finished stitching, one of the models that I need to work on FFOing, sort of finished stitching for Nashville. And while I have a few other things kind of in the plans for Works by ABC designs, I decided I need a little break, I kept saying in my mind, palette cleanser, which is silly. And while I have always maintained that I am a one project at a time person, and mostly yes, are there a few things that I've had lingering for any number of reasons? Sure. Do I have the number of cross-stitch whips that a lot of people here have? No. But we're all different stitchers. In all honesty, it wasn't until I started watching Flosstube that I even realized that people would have 20 projects started, let alone 100 or whatever, or even 10 projects started. I would be working on something and maybe I needed a break and maybe I picked up something else, but it would be never more than just a few. The other thing for myself as a stitcher, especially if I didn't start out with the new speech of welcome and all. If you've just found me, thank you for being here. If you're a return person, thank you for being here. Part of my stitching story that I've told over Flosstube over many times, I started cross stitching when I was in high school, and that absolutely was my beginning place. And cross stitched through college, and it was a year or two after college. I was living outside of Washington D.C. in Northern Virginia, and Elaine, if you're watching, hi, this is about you. I started learning bobbin lace, and that's a whole separate story. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about lace later on in this video. And Elaine was this wonderful woman she was out demonstrating bobbin lace, and she had a store at the time that was mostly needlework things, but she gave lessons and did bobbin lace. But also within her store, I found all kinds of needlework that I'd never known existed before then. And one of it was counted canvas work. That was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I know I've shown that piece on videos. And ever since then, I've always been interested in trying something different. And sometimes it's been like a one and done, and I've shown some of those projects here. At others, it's just the beginning. So a few months back, I started a project on silk gauze. Now, I'll maintain that silk gauze is not really a different technique. Silk gauze is 40, well, you can get in different counts. I would say 40 count is probably the most popular, and what I'm going to show you is on 40 count. So think 40 count linen. The difference of the material is that it's like the fabric threads are thinner. So it's very transparent. And so many times you're doing like a full coverage kind of design, like a cross stitch design that has a little motif here and a little there, wouldn't necessarily look good on silk gauze. So I told the story, I very quickly repeat it. Back in July, the New Jersey Flosstube retreat, which I'm now calling Stitch New Jersey, Danielle Stitcherista was there and had a great time talking with her. It's so fun to see stitchers again after so many years. And in her post retreat video, or her vlog, I guess. She was sharing about a magazine she picked up off the freebie table, and she was like so excited to find it because it was something she had seen a long time ago. And I know there were pieces of the story that I'm not remembering clearly, but it had to do, so this is Stitcher's World from July of 2003, and it was about this rose that was on the cover. And she just was, she loved the fact that she knew she had seen it on the cover. She didn't know what magazine, what year. And Danielle, if I'm telling the story wrong, please forgive me. But she was so excited to have it. And then she's looking at the pattern, and she was like, yeah, I don't know if this is actually ever going to get done. I'll just show you from a distance. It's like that. You know, there's a lot. It's a full coverage. It's a confetti kind of situation. So she's showing this on her video. And I think she was like, mulling over, could I make it fit on perforated paper? And the answer is no, it would be too big. Not crazy too big, but it would be too big. So she's talking this out about different counts you would need. And so when I left a comment, because it was wonderful to hear about the retreat from her perspective, I made this joking comment, and hey, you know that rose? Why don't you stitch it on 40 count silk gauze? Now, if you know anything about Danielle, she's not a 40 count silk gauze kind of stitcher. So, and I think I got a haha back from her or something, but then I started thinking about it. I have stitched on silk gauze before. I've shown some of those projects. And maybe if there's interest, I could show again at some other point, like sort of my little, there's not that many, but I have some silk gauze. Like I've had some pieces that I just have. So a few days after that, I'm like, you know what? That really would look kind of cool. And so I started stitching it. Now, the last time you guys saw it, I called it my pink blob because I had only, again, I can show this at a distance. No one is ever going to be able to copy this. I think I had about this up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so like 5 rows up. And it looked like a pink mountain or a pink blob. So when I needed the palette cleanser, it had been in my mind, I'd like to come back to this. Now it is, between it being confetti and 40 count and high magnification, all that, it is a project that I knew it would be unlikely I'd be sitting and stitching the whole thing at one time. And when I stopped, at the point that I stopped back in August or whatever, I would say it was done. I needed a break from it. But this was the first thing on my mind that I wanted to come back to when I felt like a little break from my design, my model stitching for my designs. So I was able in this last week to do another 2, like 20 stitches high across. And it is starting, where did that? Oh, here. It is starting to look, if I do this, it might be a little bit better, more like a rose. So if I show you the front cover here, can I get them both? Sorry. Wow. You can see, no you can't. Now you can see, if you look at the center part where there's those little dark areas, very much like in the center area, you can see I've started to hit some of those dark areas. This involves 12 or 13 pinks. There is one that was a blended, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I just used one of the threads for the blend. So maybe it was 13 symbols for pink and I'm only using 12. It's not a color that was used much at all. And I knew that I just needed to do a little bit, unless I felt the grand desire to keep going, which I didn't. It'll now get, put aside for a little bit, at least while I'm working on some things right now. And then I'll come back to it when I do. But because it's starting to look more like something, it makes it more exciting to come back to. And, when I shared this last time, a viewer had a copy of Danielle shared with me, but somebody had a copy of the magazine that they were able to send to me. And I don't know, where am I? So this is not just a one-off kind of picture. This is a designer named Mark Sastad. Here's the rose that's in this magazine, but like this was what he did. I mean, look at those. Here's some more. These highly detailed flowers that he did. I'm saying that in past tense. I know at some point I did Google to see if he's still around, but now I don't remember. Anyway, so there's my rose. I will come back to it when I'm feeling the desire. So I just finished off. I hope that didn't just mess things up. I meant to start out by telling y'all I'm working off of a new computer right now. I know my old computer, in the only way you would have known anything is that I know it was having some sound issues and it was getting worse. I don't remember the last video I posted when I went to check on the sound. Like there was nothing I could do. This was the computer issue. So number one, I'm hoping sound is sounding really good to you right now. And number two, I just realized I hadn't set the sleep function, so it looks like it's still recording. So I'm going to keep going here. I finished the rose, or not, I finished that row of the rose the other night, and I had in my mind exactly what I was going to pick up next, a small project that will be, I'm actually going to put it out before Nashville. That whole nother story. So, but I was up here cleaning up some things, which is part of another story, and I was moving some stuff around, and on the cabinet that's right to this direction, I have my wonderful DMC cabinet that many people have, the drawers, the full set. And next to it, I had a few things, and really the only thing that's on there is a few things that were big and needed to lay flat. And I'd moved it off because I was doing something, and then I was going to put those flat things back on, and I just paused. So I've had something for, according to the receipt that was in there, for 9 years, and that I have not done it. And I thought, just in that moment, I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can do, I don't know how long this will take. So the story behind it, as I mentioned before, I've always loved to explore different types of needlework. And some long time ago, and I couldn't tell you how or why or when, I was on a very large Facebook group called Needlepoint Nation. Needlepoint meaning it was canvas things, the majority being painted canvas. Now, if you're not familiar with painted canvas, imagine a picture or a design that somebody has taken the time, in many cases, to hand paint, although there are like printing processes and so on, the intersections of the canvas. And so you don't need to follow a pattern to stitch it. You need to just stitch. Now, the original, traditional, whatever you want to call it, is just tent stitches, like half a cross stitch. But there's definitely lots of stitches to explore out there. There's a whole, where am I? There's a whole bunch of books, mostly up here, that are all kinds of stitch dictionaries. And some of them, can you stitch on fabric? Sure, if you've done any specialty stitches, eyelets or satin stitches, of course, but you could also do those on canvas. You can also do a lot of others on canvas. So this Facebook group, I just got intrigued by it. There seemed to be lots of fun personalities and people commenting on each other's pictures, and this whole idea of painted canvas. And I don't know whether somehow I looked into it. Wow, this is an expensive way to do stitching. It is. If you think about, and actually, this is a great example. I was once commissioned to take one of my designs and to do it on a canvas, like paint it on a canvas. And special situation was basically a monochrome design. It was fine, but I wasn't painting so much as using a fine marker because of the design it was. And I know how long it took to take my pattern and to make sure I was marking in blue all the cross places of the canvas. So I have a sense of how long it could take, and naturally they're expensive for that. The top of this Facebook, the header of the Facebook group, and I just looked last night, it's still there, but there's variations of it, is a particular painted canvas. And it's something that I've seen many people do. Depending what kind of stitches you use, will give it a different look. There was something about that time, that moment, that I think desire to feel like I belonged. Like these people seem like so much fun. These people seem like they're enjoying what they're doing. I know how to stitch. This is a new way of stitching. Let me look into it. Saw how expensive it was. And then lucked out in finding that canvas that I really love that was part of the header, like on a resale site. I don't know if it was eBay, but I know I got it for a price that was way cheaper than what would normally charge for. And then I was like, well, what do I do with this? And I learned a lot from this Facebook group, and you can get a stitch guide where somebody else could tell you, in this location, use this stitch, in this location, use that stitch. And at that time, I thought that was a really good plan. Somebody else is going to tell me what to do. Nowadays, am I 100% comfortable in making my own decisions? Yes. But and then I just learned how you can get a stitch guide, involve also purchasing a kit. I'm like, you know what? This is a treat for myself. I'm spending the money to do this. And then I haven't stitched it at all. I admit that I felt a little disappointed in what I got as a stitch guide. Like, it was almost like wait, I could have come up with that on my own. Did I really need to spend this money? But I had it. I had the threads. I had it, and it's just been sitting. So I decided, you know what? I'm not sure if I can knock this out quickly, but last night I started it. So this design, I believe it's just called kindness. Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. That is a quote from the Dalai Lama. I've looked into it to use potentially as a cross-stitch design. There's an interesting things going on related to copyright when it comes to quotes that are modern day quotes. Is this okay that it was used on a needlepoint design? I'm not quite sure. Is the Dalai Lama or his people ever going to question this and create a lawsuit about it? No. Okay. I'm no expert in copyright law. Nope. But it is something I pause and think about when using a modern day quote. And it's still something I want to keep thinking about because I really love the quote. So it is painted, like you can see there. And when it's hand painted and not printed, if you, focus on those outline of the petals of that flower, it is very clearly marking to you at this cross of this canvas threads, that's this color. But when you cross here, it's that color. And so I just started with, this is a Kreinik thread that's going along here. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how long I stick with it. I don't know how quickly it'll go up. That was the other thing I learned in this Facebook group is, I don't know. Different projects could take different amounts of time. Oh, that's a stupid, of course, okay? But it was something, I guess for me when it's come to stitching, there's always this like cost analysis. If I'm willing to spend $20 on a pattern, $20 on fabric, and I don't know, $10 more on thread, let's just say $50, which might be a lot for like a cross stitch design. And, but I know I'm going to spend 50 hours, not even 25 hours with it. So it's like separate from the enjoyment I get at the end. It's like for $2 that hour, that's a good way to spend money. If you compare it to, I don't know, like going to the movies. But when you have an expensive hand-painted canvas and you do that kind of cost business, how much dollars it is per hour for your time with a project, that's where my math brain kind of says, and my frugal brain says, So anyway, it's a very unique situation that I had that painted canvas. I've literally had it for 9 years because the receipt for the stitch guiding threads was in the pattern stuff that I had. And I like the story behind it was wanting to try something new, wanting to feel more a part of that community. And I had different moments of that. But anyway, here I am starting a painted canvas. I fully suspect it's probably the only painted canvas I'll ever do in my life. Will I use the exact stitches that are mentioned in that stitch guide? Mostly yes. There's one in particular that I think I will probably change. We'll see. All right. So those have been a couple of recent stitching things. Next thing to share with you, if you have seen on, mostly Instagram, but probably other places as well, Cosmo threads, which is out of Japan. has recently reached out to a number of cross-stitch designers, cross-stitch designers here in the US, really wanting to get their product out there. I know there are stores that carry Cosmo threads. It's very similar to DMC in a six-stranded cotton thread. But I was among many designers that said, yes, I would like to give this a try. And Cosmo was generous in sending me, others, a full set. In addition to the full set, they sent the color card. And by me doing this, you get the sense that, I mean, it's similar to DMC in terms of lots of colors, lots of color families. The number, they say 500 colors. And DMC, what is DMC at? And then it's all like, well, do you count the variations and all? But about the same, maybe a little bit more. Now, I haven't started stitching with them yet. What I'm working on charting right now is actually going to be the first design that I will use them for. I like using new things, but I'm also the kind of stitcher that's very, very aware of those who love to stitch as the model was stitched. And then when you stitch a model using either fabric or threads that might be challenging for people to get, I love the fact that it's fairly easy to find what I think is decent in terms of my few checking charts to convert to DMC. So, but I was struggling with how to best use these, how to best store these so that they could be usable to me as a collection. Now, my DMC cabinet, I know I spoke about this when I first set it up. I have set it up not in numerical order, but I have each little compartment is basically, it's on the DMC color card, but like one column here. So if I were on the DMC color card and I think I want this color, I will pull out the whole drawer or that whole section. I'll find that color, but maybe I'll discover, one little bit lighter is actually going to be better. That's why I wanted to keep them in the color order. And I had different ideas what I wanted to do with the Cosmo, and I was all ready to start doing this individual thing. And then I'm like, you know what? I need it to be useful in the same way. I need it to be set up similar to the DMC. Started poking around. Just want to share with you all what I found on Amazon. The wood is in no way the quality of the DMC box, and I love how it's like this old-fashioned French buttons, and I think that's thread. It's small. I mean, if you look at that, and each drawer. Now, right now, I only have like a little piece of cardboard. I need to. When I'm all done, I'll get something a little bit stiffer and better. But so in each drawer, I have 2 columns from the color card. Now, I wasn't sure when I ordered this if this was going to work. I got it. I realized I like it. It's going to look really nice sitting next to my DMC cabinet. But there was no way I could squish all 500 threads in this. And when I evolved to the idea of 2 columns, it's 5 drawers. I've ordered a second one. It's supposed to be arriving later today. So I have half of my Cosmo threads in here organized by the color card. I will get a second one of these, put the rest of them in there, and will very much look forward to playing with them. So as of this moment, I have not stitched anything with them. I will be stitching very soon. All the reviews, all the things I read about them, there's a lot of positiveness. Is it not as easy to get as DMC? Sure. But clearly Cosmo is trying to get into the market a little bit more in the US. I very much appreciate that. I very much appreciate this opportunity to try something new, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, I was going to say kind of inspired by the Cosmo threads, but it's not just the Cosmo threads. If you've been following me on Instagram, I've been doing a lot of exploring with color. And I mean, not limiting, obviously, threads, but color in general. I have some basic understanding of color theory things. I am not an expert. A lot of my understanding has come from some of the stitching projects that I've designed or altered over the years. One particular one taught me so much. It's my very large one that hangs over my fireplace. But I'm always on the lookout for things. Some weeks back, I was getting books from the library. I was requesting books from the library, and however it evolved, I'm like, let me get some books on color. And I have I love libraries, if I haven't said that enough times in videos. So here's a book, A Visual History from Newton to Modern Color Matching Guides. And to me, if I just sort of do one of these kinds of things, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Now, is this a book I read from cover to cover every single sentence? No. But is this something fun to page through? Yeah. This was mentioned by one of my stitching friends, saw this, somebody mentioning it on a video. I think it's a French person, so I'm going to pronounce it Michel Pastoureau. So this is a book called Blue, The History of a Color. And he, I think it's going to be a he, has a book like this in multiple colors. So there's one for green and one for red and purple and, well, no, I don't think he has purple because that's the one I was interested in. Black and white. And this is the only one of his books that I could get through my library system. Again, is it a book that I read cover to cover? No. Are there some really fascinating things about the color blue in here? Sure. If I could, I would love to see the other colors that he has. Is it enough for me to purchase them? No. I'm very much a library person. I have loved this book, and this one might be one that I actually end up getting my own copy. It's easy, it's cheap enough to get a used copy. If you have ever seen in any kind of place the visual things where you see something like I want to get one that's, I should have picked something out that was really good beforehand. Wait, where'd that X one go? Like where you see things like this and they're like, okay, so your eye believes that this yellow is the same thing as this yellow and this color here is the same as this color here. But then when you look closely over here on this side, do you see how those two X's are actually connected and they're the same color? And so your eye has potentially momentarily been confused. So this man, Joseph Albers, this book was originally published in like the 60s, and he was like a pioneer in the interactions of colors. Now, most of the things he's written about, and I actually kind of like this style, the way it's written. It's certainly not a poem, but look how it's written. It just, I don't know, it makes it a little bit easier to read when it's like one sentence at a time. Most of he's not talking paint here. He's not talking thread. He's just talking color. And so when it comes, whatever your interest, whatever your medium is, many of us, it's thread, but paint, colored pencils, whatever your medium is that you're interested in color, there are certain color principles that could apply. Not all of them. I mean, if you take something like paint, you can mix paint in a way that you can't mix threads. Just to use as an example. Anyway, this is a really interesting, especially like, and it's probably set up this way because this is a 50th anniversary edition. So this was like in 2013, I think it was published. This version, yeah. So that you have his writing here, and then the back you have, quote, the exercises that are related to whatever specific thing he's talking about. Really interesting. I really like this one. And then, as part of my colors, was Crayola crayons. I posted about this on Instagram. Like this one, I did read cover to cover. This was so interesting. I haven't looked at crayons in the longest time until this morning. So it's the history of the company and then talking about the colors. If somebody had said to me before I read this book, how many different colors, Crayola crayons, do you think there are? My brain would say, well, I know, like when I was a kid, there was a box of 64, and there's probably more than that now. But what I learned is there's 120 of the regulars. There's also others that are, so you can get a box that has, I think it's 144 or something like that, but the basic colors. And so I got myself a box of 120 because this book was so interesting. And just this morning, I know I posted one on Instagram, like when it came, they were just in random order, which the book says. They come in random order, like whatever size box. It's just the way they were put together on that particular day, and they might be put together in a different order on a different day. But this morning, I was like, you know what? It's been bugging me, and so I needed to organize them by color. I'm not going to take them all out, but I think maybe you can't. hold it like this, you can see I was doing some organizing by color. And I was using the order of colors that they have in this book. And man, are there interesting names for colors? If interesting shades of colors. Now, there were a number of the ones, like I'm pulling this page and I don't know, look at this one and look at the crayon. I'm like, wow, that's either darker or lighter than what I think it is. I haven't used any of them to actually compare. My memory of being a kid is that sometimes the color that you think it is isn't the way it shows up on paper. Again, this is just my playing with, and this is the sharpener that comes with it. I'm thinking about the box of 64 that had the sharpener built in the back. When you buy 120, you get a little dude who is a sharpener. So I'm not sure where I'll go with this in my stitching world, but I love exploring it. And then the last thing related to color that I very much wanted to share with you, and I can't even tell you in what order things came about, but there was one time, I think this happens to all of us, where I got suckered in by an ad on Instagram. But this one really, really intrigued me. Eventually, returned to her website multiple times and thought, this is something I'm really interested in. So she has a number of products, but she calls it a color catalog. And, it's you buy it as a PDF, but it's an interactive in that you can look at color palettes by genre, by color, by all kinds of ways. That alone was very interesting to me. If you are familiar with the website Stitch Palettes, amazing. Go check it out. I'll put a link below. That one is created by someone it's all created by DMC numbers. So that is made for stitchers to use. Hey, I really love 160, which is a blue that I really like. I want to see what colors might look nice with it. Go to her website, type in 160, and you see the color palettes that she has put together. You can also she can follow her on Instagram. You could get like a weekly email. Really interesting. So and this happened again, but because I'm talking too much and not moving this, hopefully that didn't cut out. However, love that. But I'm always interested in exploring more. So this is someone who, in addition to these, she has other things on her website, but her main thing is this color catalog, which has, I forget how many thousands of things on it. But she recently, like within this past year, came out with a physical thing. So these she calls her color cubes. There are two of them. There's two color catalogs because she had I think she did one and there was such positive things, she did another. So there's these two cubes. Now these alone, I suppose you could get them on their own, but they're physical things of what are in the color catalog. So if I chose something like periwinkle in her color catalog and I saw her listing or her showing her palettes that all involve periwinkle, not a DMC numbers, it's not DMC things. But then the interesting part to me is that not only could I see them on my screen, she's created cards. So, and that's clearly not a periwinkle one, but there's mostly 5. Some of them I have seen 6 colors. And on the other side of each of these, there's is it called RGB? Code, the RGB codes, whatever it's called, different hues, tones, I forget the names. It's a unique way of thinking about color combinations. And on my Instagram recently, I pulled out a couple of cards and just matched up some DMs, found a color palette that really appealed to my eye. Pulled out this, found some DMCs that go along with it. So yes, the Stitch Palettes website, DMCs, boom, you'll get them. But this is so many more combinations, and certainly some that I may not have ever thought of, and maybe some that are not easily done. Like this does not appeal to me, but if it did, can I really get 5 greens in DMC threads that work well? I don't know. I could give it a try. Or something like this. I bet is that 310? Yeah, it is black. So this is black, and that's called dark burgundy. So anyway, I've loved playing with these, just sort of, yes, I've scrolled through all the pages on the PDFs, but there's something to be getting it this way. And the other thing that I remember seeing that really got to me, or a little thing that I thought made a big difference in her description of all of these physical cards, which, it costs more money to get the cards in addition to the PDF, is that there's no like this side, there's a margin right there, but there's no margins. So you can butt up right against to whatever you're trying to match. Now, her world is very much of like the adult coloring world out there. Her Facebook group, it's a lot of people talking about different kinds of pencils and markers and all that, which is amazing world. I don't need any more hobbies kind of thing. But that's where she's coming from a color interest to explore potentially like adult coloring things. That is more similar to our thread world than the painter world. Because coloring with markers or pencils or whatever, yeah, you could do some blending, but in general, you got this color, you got this color. And that's what we have with threads. We don't have paint where you put a couple more drops of purple and it changes the look of the blue or whatever. So I'll put a link to her stuff below. I have just found these many beautiful color palettes, and this has also been part of my Cosmo thread and playing around with things. I've been inundating myself with color ideas, and we'll see where it all goes. Oh, Jesus, longer than I thought it would. Let me just say one last thing because I wanted to share it with you anyway. I think an earlier, a couple months ago, I might have mentioned in a video about this amazing exhibit in New York City. Now, it is closing January 1st or 2nd, so if you watch this video, if you live in New York City, if you're able to, go check this out. But I also recognize the limits. It is about lace. And I went to it soon after it opened back in September. There was a special day program for lace makers. So a lot of lace makers were invited for that day. It was amazing. And it was amazing to see with other lace makers. So, I'm looking at this or that and overhearing the conversations of people who are talking about the lace like we know what we're talking about. I don't understand why it took until December for the New York Times to do a review, but it did. So I told myself after that day in September, it was definitely the kind of thing I wanted to go back to you see it with different eyes. And so I made sure to do that last weekend or last week or so. So this is the amazing catalog. And it's not just here are the pieces in this exhibit. It's so much more than that. I could talk your ear off about lace. I haven't been doing much bobbin lace in the last couple of years, but it's been on my mind during this winter break. I do want to pick up a project that is sitting waiting for me to pick it up. And it's because going to this exhibit has just gotten me back into lace world. When I went this time, just a few weeks ago, granted, it's December, I was there on a Saturday, touristy season, whatever, but there were a lot more people there than I thought would be there, and I'm sure that's because of the New York Times. Like, you put an exhibit, I think they used a whole full page for that exhibit, and people are attracted to that. It is the largest lace exhibit that has been, well, certainly in New York City, but maybe in this country, I'm not sure, in decades, and it is... There's so much to be said about it, but I know most of you are here for the stitching talk. But I'm hoping that I will get back into doing some bobbin lace, and maybe in my next video I'll have some stuff to share with you in that world. So lots of things talked about today. I know I'm different than a lot of floss tubers out there who have lots of amazing cross-stitch projects to share. But if you're here, and especially if you're still here, I appreciate it very much. Look, the sun is starting to come out. That's crazy. Well, thank you so much for being here. As always, the likes and the comments and the subscribe, that's the drill with YouTube. If you can add those things to anybody's floss tube, it is always helpful for other people to find that floss tube. So I love being part of this community. I thank you for watching. Whatever holiday you do or do not have going on this next bit of time, I hope you have a good time, a good number of days. For some people, it's a quiet time of year, rough time of year. As with always, just wanting everyone to have some peace and light in their life. So, thank you so much. Happy New Year. Till next time. Bye.